Yes, bitch, let's spill the tea. It's reunion time. I'm your host, not for possession, Narcissa Deville, and welcome to hell. Girl, I got a little bit of a sunburn over the, not even a little bit, I got a lot of sunburn over the weekend. This is the first time I put on makeup since I got sunburnt, so I'm peeling a little bit. I'm giving you Death Becomes Her Realness. It's a whole moment, but like, just thought I should start with that because I'm a little bit itchy and everything hurts still a little bit. Like I'm just, oh God, I'm a fucking mess. Like why? This is what I get for sitting out in the sun for 2 hours looking like if I were any more pale, I'd be invisible, girl. Like, not the business. So this isn't going to be a typical review for obvious reasons. This is the reunion. So naturally, I'm going to be talking about a whole lot of drama, a whole lot of tea, a whole lot of like mess. I don't know how long this is going to be honest, because the reunion is kind of a hard thing to talk about. Like, you don't have outfits to review. You don't have a challenge to discuss. So it's kind of like, you know, talk about what was talked about a little bit, but I also don't want to give a lot away. So it's kind of like, it's hard, girl. It's really hard. So I'm going to do the best I can, and we're going to see how it goes. So of course, naturally, we had to start with Miss Vanjie because that is kind of like the iconic moment of the season.
Miss Vanjie.
That literally exploded everywhere and became this huge thing. And honestly, I have to say, I don't entirely understand it. I didn't really think it was all that funny at the time. I know it's something that like everyone's saying, and like the more people say it, the more ridiculous it becomes. And it becomes this thing where I'm like, okay, it's a little bit funny because like it's nonstop. But like at the same time, I'm also like, girl, when is this gonna die? Like literally throughout the whole fucking season, I was so gagged. It's such a random thing to become so huge. So it's one of those things that of course they had to start with it. It was just really funny. And then of course, you know, this being, they're going to be doing the finale as they did last season, which is going to be kind of a lip sync battle royale of the top 4. I can already tell you that's going to be very interesting, especially with like who these queens are. So this reunion, Ru decided to go through kind of the best of the lip syncs and kind of show different ones and just why they were so amazing or whatever, or not in the case of one of them, because they did show the one that sent Monique home, and of course she didn't know the lyrics, which was very unfortunate. I will say one of the things I noticed throughout this was I forgot having the Vixen there. I forgot how much I really enjoyed like her bringing up shit and calling people out on their trashiness and just kind of like, you know, calling out Eureka for that whole drama. Now, mind you, I didn't watch Untucked, so I really didn't get to see some of that drama. I didn't get to see all of that, so I wasn't really aware of what all was going on. So to see it here, I'm like, oh, wow. And then for them to still pop off and kind of still have issues and still kind of be fighting, I was like, okay, girl. And of course, let's be real, I was kind of gagged because Miss Vixen just was like, done, and just walked out. And it was kind of a whole moment where the queens kind of were talking about it and debating, you know, what should have been done. And I feel like Asia really took it personally because, you know, she was very good friends with the Vixen. She probably still is, actually. She's very good friends with the Vixen, so of course she took it personally. Of course she felt like they should have done more and someone should have said something and someone should have stopped her. But unfortunately, you know, Ru made the point where there isn't a lot you can do. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those situations where, yes, you want to help someone. Yes, you want to be there for them. Yes, you want to support them. But at the end of the day, you know, we're all adults. They're adults. If you make a decision like you're going to leave, you're going to leave. I think there was plenty of situations. It's kind of like the whole Ben thing for All Stars 3. You know, some people could say, well, why didn't anyone go after her? Why didn't anyone stop her from, you know, eliminating herself in this whole big thing? she's an adult. She made her decision. She has to live with that. And I think the Vixen is the same way. I know that it would be nice to say, oh, maybe if we were there for her, maybe if we stood up for her, we could have stopped her. But unfortunately, I just don't think that's the case. And, you know, it was nice seeing Asia's passion for this and her tears and her really wanting to fight for this. But I think Ru made a very good point in that she comes from much the same place, but she still has to learn to deal with things because that's part of what, you know, living in this world is. And I think it was a very emotional moment. It was a very heartbreaking moment. And there were a lot of those, I have to say. This was intense in a lot of ways. There was a lot of heartbreaking moments, a lot of personal moments where the queens were kind of talking about their own past and things that happened to them and things that were very, very rough for them and growing up. And that was kind of a lot. And of course, that's not something that, I don't know if it's not something that I don't want to go into, but it's something that's kind of difficult to go into. It is very emotional. There were a lot of tears, you know, so it was interesting. The best part, of course, is when they toot or boot some of their outfits. I always love this. I always think it's really, really funny. And of course, the fact that they had to bring up Miss Monet's Spun dress, which honestly, I still stand by loving. I know that Ru ended up giving it a toot, but most of the girls gave it a boot. I have to say, I still love this. I still think it's great. So, like, what are you gonna do? For considering what the challenge was, like... So what was really interesting was seeing Monique and Cameron kind of having it out, because I think Monique had an idea that Cameron was using a strategy, and that's why she was so quiet. Because apparently she made a point to say, I don't want to say anything or too much on camera because I don't want to come off as shady. And I think what's interesting about that is it's something that Ru talks about a lot, particularly on the podcast, which is queens who try to edit themselves. And I think you get into a very bad position when you try to edit yourself, because you're trying to decide how people should see you. And that was one of the things that people said about Miss Cracker. That was one of her problems. You can't really decide how you want people to view you. And unfortunately, I think that's something that I myself have been guilty of, especially on YouTube. You know, I edit things a lot more because I don't want to seem like, you know, a certain type of way, and I won't say certain things. And I, especially in live videos, you know, I've talked about this before, I edit myself before I speak on live videos. Now, I still do talk a lot, but I find that there are certain things. Listen, I have a very dark sense of humor. My sense of humor goes from 0 to 100 real quick. And so sometimes I will say things that maybe aren't the best and make a joke that's pretty dark that maybe isn't the best, but that is real. And so for me, I think there are times when, you know, I edit myself and try and not say those things and not post those things because I don't want people to have that kind of image of me. And so I do try and self-edit. And of course, you know, in this type of situation where I am the only one editing my story and I am the only one who, you know, I have full control, I think that's why sometimes I was scared for a long time about doing live. And I'm scared sometimes about doing, you know, in the future, doing interviews with other people. And, you know, if I ever did a collab, there is part of that that scares me a little, because I enjoy having that control over my image and knowing that that's not really realistic. So I understand that. I appreciate where these queens are coming from with that. That said, I'm not altogether surprised that there's kind of this idea that Cameron may be fake and that kind of her attitude doesn't really match who she really is. You know, one of the things Monique was saying was that she was very quiet on the show, but then on social media, she's very, like, pops off at everything and just completely different. And of course, you know, Cameron's trying to say that at her own shows, she's like that. And so it's very, very interesting because, of course, the only way to know is, you know, the only one who will know is Cameron, of course, because nobody knows what she's really like. And I think that's kind of the thing that's hard for people, is, like, a lot of the queens didn't feel like they really knew the real Cameron. And it comes into question, you know, how much do you mean what you say if, you know, you're keeping things to yourself and trying to not be shady, but really what it is you just don't want to be, you know, you're just trying to edit yourself and you're just trying to create this picture so that people will like you and maybe you'll go further, but that doesn't necessarily help you because it isn't real. You know, I think the biggest thing with, like, if you look at the Vixen versus Cameron was very self-edited and people don't really know how to feel about her, whereas someone like the Vixen was very much herself and maybe not to the best degree all the time, but people love that about her because she was real. She was 100. She wasn't trying to self-edit to make herself look better. At least it didn't seem that way to me. So it's kind of like, it's questionable. You know what I mean? So of course, I loved the moment where they all read and they all kind of threw shade at each other. I thought that was very, very funny. And then of course the question came up, who would the girls like to see win? And I was actually kind of surprised. Eureka got the most votes. Asia got the second most votes, and then Aquaria got 2 votes from the girls. Cameron got absolutely none. And you could see that it was she was visibly pained because of that fact. She did not appreciate that nobody thought she should win. And I have to say, you know, listen, I am not by any means her biggest fan, but I get why that might be rough. You know, at the end of the day, I think that kind of thing backfires on you. I think you feel, and speaking from my own experience, like I said before, I think as someone who has edited themselves and try to create this image, you box yourself in and you create this little image of who I am and what I look like and what I'm about. And even if people can't tell that that's maybe, you know, not the full story or whatever, even if people can't tell that you're editing yourself, it becomes a lot for you because suddenly now you have to decide, okay, what can I say about this? What can't I say about this? You know, everything becomes kind of a battle of words of just trying to fit into your own narrow definition of what you want people to see you as. And unfortunately, even despite that, you can't control how people see you. You know, I'm very much, partly because I'm a Slytherin and partly just because that's who I am, I'm very much this person who tries to project an air of strength and being someone who, you know, is an unemotional bitch who doesn't give a shit what anyone thinks. Unfortunately, that isn't always true and that isn't always realistic, but that's still an image that I've tried to cultivate, and that's something that I haven't, you know, I don't discuss the fact that it is me to an extent, but it's not always me. And sometimes things do get to you and sometimes things do upset you. But when you try to be this person who is like, I don't give a fuck, you have to keep up that image at all times, and it's just not always possible. And sometimes things get through the cracks and you're not sure why. Part of me understands where Cameron is coming from. I may not care for her. I may not think she's all that, but I understand the concept of being someone who is trying to edit yourself to appear a certain way, to make someone think something about you that maybe isn't the most true. Now, in her, obviously it's different sides of the spectrum. She's trying to seem like she's more calm and collected and nice. I'm trying to seem like I'm aloof and don't give a shit, but you get what I mean. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, listen, my opinion has not changed in the least. I'm still Team Aquaria or Team Asia. I really don't care. It's going to be very, very interesting. I really hope, considering that they're doing another lip sync battle royale, that Aquaria and Asia really fucking bring it and really just knock the other two out of the park. That is my hope. We shall see. Thank you all so, so much for watching, and you know what the fuck to do. You want to like, comment, subscribe, anything. I don't care. Until next time, stay shady.